It's kind of interesting because it's taken a whole hour to even wake you up. Do you realize that? I've sat in the back of the room, and it reminds me about my middle son, who literally would do everything in his life like this. You know, as a little kid in grade 2, he was having a challenge reading. And a lot of it was because other kids had laughed at him. We came from Canada, we moved to the US, and what was happening is he went to read out loud, and guess what? From Canada, we say words really funny. We say out, we say about, we say process. So what do you think happened to a kid in grade 2 as soon as he started to read? Well, he got laughed at. So before you know it, I'm being called in and I'm being told that my son can't read and that they basically think that he has a major processing issue and that he's probably never going to do well in school. So think about how old you are at that point. And somebody else is making those decisions from the fact that he's kind of like this, he's slumped over because guess what? He's been laughed at. And I feel like that's where all of you started when you came into this room today. It's like there's a lot of this. There's a lot of what I heard Kathy describe and show as that tightness or that fear. And honestly, sitting here, I believe it's taken an hour of some fabulous speakers from around the world to actually even wake you up. So I'm going to ask you a question. You know, who here feels and really believes that they're living to their full potential? Can you stick up your hand for me? That's really sad, isn't it? Now, I'm going to tell you that I asked myself the exact same question. As a coach, as somebody who travels and speaks and does a lot of things in the profession over the last number of years, I realized that as I left practice, I sold my practice 10 years ago. Actually, 10 years ago this weekend is when the sale of my practice closed. And what I realized, yes, I've done a lot of things, but somehow, as Dr. Gilles started this weekend and said, you know, this is the year, literally over the holidays, I was really fortunate to be on a family vacation. My middle son, that same son who couldn't read, after high school, he's been on a work visa down in New Zealand, so we were all down there visiting him. And just, I woke up and I said, wow, this is the year. And even doing all those things or having all these ideas and great projects I'm involved with, what I recognized is I'm not living up to my full potential. So the three of you that stuck up your hand in the room, I'd still love to chat with you because I think there's a lot more, probably for you in your life. But the reality is for all of you that didn't stick up your hand, what's that say? So does that say that the people, the places, the things, everything you're doing in your life, what I want you to recognize is we attract everything into our life. I'm pretty simple, I'm pretty simplistic, and I like to give you really sort of analogies or examples that you can really anchor to. So what I want you to think about is just a radio dial. So if we take the simple FM dial, you know, I could be station 98 over here. And on a dial, I mean, everything's digital now, but if you think about the old days when I grew up and you actually had to change the station, you know, manually by turning, literally, if I wanted to go from station 98 to station 102, that's a very different place on a dial, isn't it? But do you understand that what that really is just a different vibration? And I heard the word vibration already about 15 times in the last hour. I sort of lost track at the number. You know, Eric had you standing up and moving and shifting your energy, your physiology. So guess what? That's doing nothing other than taking you from one radio station over here, one vibration. It's taking you all the way over here to a different vibration, isn't it? The way you breathe, the way you stand, your physiology, the things that all three of your speakers have asked you to say. Guess what? They've been asking you to say a thing called an affirmation, haven't they? They've just been asking you to think differently, change your breathing, change your physiology, and what they're really asking is for you to change your vibration. Because I'm telling you, as a profession, we have a really big problem. Because if we're all still over here at this station 98, if you in your life are still at the same vibration that you're at, that you walked in, and if you walk out of here and haven't shifted over here, if you walk out of here and you're still over here, do you honestly think you're going to attract anything different in your life? So the number one thing I see, whether it's chiropractors, all these other professionals I work around the world with now, what I see is the number one key to success is just decisiveness. Just deciding. I woke up at Christmas, New Year's in New Zealand and said, this is going to be a different year. And all of a sudden I was asked, literally, the day I got back, I was asked whether I would travel to 25 different clinical trial sites. I'm involved with a big project in autism. And I was asked if I would travel to 25 different clinical trial sites to get them signed up to do a new project of ours. Our company is worth a lot of money based on intellectual property, but we need to get another trial site started. So think about what that's probably going to take to sign up 25 university institutions and projects. And you know, a lot of times somebody's going to tell you that to get a new trial started, we've already finished a whole trial, but to get a new trial started, they told me that it was probably going to be about the next 12 to 18 months. And you know what? This is just a different year for me. And so I said, I'll do the project. And guess what? I'm going to have this done in the first quarter. I'm no different than you. I have no skill sets in the new career and the new projects I work on. I'm a chiropractor. Again, I'm not in practice anymore. I do a lot of different things. The distinction is that I've had great mentors and people in my life that taught me that the number one key to success is decisiveness. So if I stayed over here at this radio dial 98 to do that project, to be frustrated because that meant I was going to be on planes and that I was just going to have to do a lot of travel again, do you think that I would get that project done? So I had to say, what are all these tools, which are the things that your three speakers so far have talked about, that would allow me to get to this dial over here, radio station vibration 102, and I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it just the way I started practice, just the way I talk to people about chiropractors everywhere, just the way I do other things. And literally, as of this week, we already have 23 of those clinical trial sites set up. Now, everybody's going to tell you that can't be done. I just decided that if I was going to do it, I was going to do the way that I did practice, which was I said, I'm just going to figure this out. I'm just going to show up with the right energy, the right vibration, and I'm just going to make this happen. And years ago in practice, people would visit my practice and they'd say, oh, I want this. And the first question I would ask is, are you willing to pay the price? And a lot of people would say, well, what do you mean? What is that? Well, that's all the things your speakers just talked about. Your physiology, your thinking, your attitudes, your ideas. So guess what? The last 2 months, I've probably worked multiple 20, 22-hour days. To go in and out of Detroit from Denver, I live in Boulder, Colorado, guess what? I can do that in one day. I could get up, I could get on a plane, I could fly, I could rent a car, go to the site, make the discussions and the conversations, handshake deal, follow up with the document, CDAs, hop on the plane, and come back home. So you know what? That's not fun. But it's what has allowed that in a short period of time, we've been able to do something that was technically going to take 12 to 18 months. Now, I give you these silly examples just to show you that we all live in this same world. We all have to just decide. So if I'm over here at this radio station 98, you know, that's where in practice, you know, I'll say, you know, to a patient, do you want to be, you know, healthy, or do you want to just be not sick? Just being not sick is this radio station 98 that I described to you. Being healthy is a very different place on that dial, isn't it? It's way over here. Total shift in perspective. Same thing for you as a chiropractor. If I'm over here at this higher vibration, I can say, do you want to be wealthy? Or do you want to be way back over here, which is just not poor? You know, do you want to be successful? Who in here would love to have a successful practice? I realize there's a lot of students, a lot of assistants, but who here would love to have a successful practice? A more important question is that I can ask you, who here would like to have a successful life? That's, again, a different vibration, isn't it? Not to say that a successful practice can't build to have a successful life, but feel the energy of just even when I said that, would you like to have a successful life? Well, guess what? If you have a successful life, if you build that successful life, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to have a successful practice. I just heard someone say that. You're going to have successful relationships. You know, let me go back to my son in grade 2 who can't read. He's slumped over. Doesn't matter how many times I tell him, you're smart, you know, you're a great kid. It has to become about him, doesn't it? So we start, you know, I speak, I travel, I teach, so I do all the same things that we talk about at home about affirmations. So I say to them, okay, 3 times a day we're going to say, I am a great reader. Well, think about how we probably started this. So slumped shoulders, hung over. Okay, Mom, I am a great reader. Now, do you think any part of that is going to help change him? But I mean, at that point, what is he in grade 2? 7? Not quite 8? So I said, okay, we're going to do this together. So every morning, middle of the day, I drove to his school. Left my office, drove to his school, and we did our affirmations. And at night, we did his affirmation again. Now, it's interesting, I give that example because that's the most resistant kind of personality. That's a lot of you stuck in your stuff, really closed down. And within a couple of weeks, I get a phone call from the teacher, and I'm thinking, oh, God, here we go, what now? And his teacher says to me, wow, you've done something really different with Jackson. Did you take him to a psychologist? Did you have him work with a reading specialist? You know, ear, nose, throat person? I said to her, tell me, what do you mean by that? She said, well, we did this little workshop, and he can read. He read every single thing. I said, isn't that interesting? Guess what he did? All he did was tell himself that he could read. So you know what? If a 7 or 8-year-old can probably change his life, because think about it, if he kept thinking that he couldn't read, if he starts going through not elementary only, but middle school, what do you think is going to happen to that kid if he can't read? If he has this stigma about school, about his self-worth? Well, each of you in this room is like that 7 or 8-year-old about multiple facets of your practice in your life. So I know that it took probably that whole first hour to even wake up. But what I'm going to ask you is, are you really willing to hear things this weekend? Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to listen to some of the things, the gems that you've already heard from Sharon and Kathy and Eric? Because you know what? If you really heard that, guess what? You could already go home. We could be done. We could all go for dinner. You wouldn't need to hear anything different. And you would walk back into your practice and into your life after you leave here already different, wouldn't you? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually challenge you. Because I don't think many of you in the room are there yet, are you? But you could be. If my son can change his life, basically, by becoming a reader in 2 weeks, what do you think is possible this weekend? So it just goes back to, what price are you willing to pay? Are you willing to talk to someone different? Are you willing to do something different? Are you willing to ask some questions of some of these great chiropractors on the break? Guess what? I don't get the privilege of adjusting people now. Really young in my career, I sold my practice. I groomed my associate and sold my practice. based on that, it matters to me whether you change this weekend or not, whether you fill this room like Dr. Gillis talked about for another time, whether you start to bring more chiropractors, whether you change your life and change your practice. Your finances would change your practice. Serving people provides not just not being poor, but it provides wealth of money, experiences, opportunities in your life. You actually have that opportunity this weekend. The room filled with people that I saw just over an hour ago, you're not going to change your life. So my role, I'm a coach. I coach people in businesses. It doesn't matter to me whether you like me saying this or not, but if you stay the way that you walked into this room, you're not going to change your life. You are not going to be living up to your full potential. And believe me, I say the same thing to myself. I still have coaches hired in my life. My husband teases, it's either a lifetime job or I'm just a really slow learner. Because I've spent a lot of money on coaches and mentors and great people in my life. But I'll tell you that my life is different from that. I come from that background with Jill. Guess what? We did a lot of things to just create these great lives. I also know one of the individuals, one of the doctors that walked up was the first one to walk up, willing to walk up in front of a room full of people that she doesn't know to get that from Dr. LaMarche. And guess what? Years ago, I had the opportunity to know her through a practice management company, and I've teased her all along. Everybody that's got these preconceived ideas about practice and how many hours and how much work, and she has a fabulous life, and she always felt the stigma that she ran a part-time practice because she practiced 3 days a week. First of all, she runs the best damn part-time so-called practice I've ever seen in the country. And it's interesting to me because Dr. Laura was the first one up here to get that gift. I'm going to just ask you, are you willing to do that? If she already has created a great life and relationships, and yet she's at a seminar halfway around the country, believe me, we didn't come for your weather. And if we're willing to travel and we're willing to be here, and she still at this phase of her life and career is willing to stand up and take something that could make her that much better, tap her into living a little bit more with that full potential, then I'd like to ask you, what are you going to do this weekend? Thank you. Thank you for having me.